there's a sense of overwhelm by a number of leaders right now on how to sustain through this time of rapid change. And in particular, to sustain focus during this time and to be able to
Yeah.
execute what you want to execute. So, in this time when there is just so much AI driven data and so many emerging, changing tasks and priorities and projects and even strategic directions are emerging rapidly and changing rapidly. What are your ways that you're sustaining through this time to sustain your focus and manage the overwhelm?
So I think that one thing that doesn't change is you always have to have a plan. Could be a short-term plan, a medium-term plan, long-term plan. So if you ground yourself near or behind a plan that you may have devised, but you create a plan that allows for flexibility, then you have a roadmap. And when you work with your teams, you work with your employees, your staff, your colleagues, they see that you're being guided by a plan. So one of the ways to get through all this change is having clear idea of where you want to head to, but the way that you're going to head to, you have to be extremely flexible that it might change. So for example, you may think that you're going to implement a new CRM and you build that CRM, you start building it, and you're basing it off a platform that doesn't have AI in it. And then you meet a new vendor that comes to you and says, hey, we have an AI CRM. So what do? Do you stop everything, restart and reinvest? Or do you build enough of a good enough first attempt? And then afterwards you bring in the AI. That's an example, but there's many, many examples like that. So what's happening is a few years ago, AI was being talked about as a bunch of projects. Now it's being talked about as we need to integrate it into the way we operate. And a few years ago, like even 2 years ago, the big concern was all around governance and things like that. Now there's still a concern around governance. And some of the most well-spoken and articulate AI gurus are saying there's a danger of letting AI just go rampant and run on its own because there's a risk of major challenges in our society if we let that happen. At the same time, we hear, we feel in companies that there's a need for using AI to be more productive, to grow, to be more efficient. Because one thing that also doesn't change is there's always this imperative to grow and create more profitability in companies. That's constant because in publicly traded companies, there's always a need to show growth and profitability. So when AI is seen as a way to get there, then it puts a lot of pressure on companies to implement AI, which sometimes also creates fear because it means for some people, it might mean a job being replaced. Then you hear people saying, well, it's not the job that's replaced. It's the person who doesn't know how to use AI that's replaced. But if you really think about it, at the end of the day, this automation of using technology and using artificial intelligence as a way to accelerate and grow, the idea is still to do more with less at the end of the day, right? So the AI is sometimes seen as a threat. Sometimes it's seen as a tool. Sometimes it's seen as a mystery because we don't know how we're going to use it. And then there's still this pervasive fear of it thinking on its own and making decisions where the human is not behind the screen anymore, but the human is being watched by AI. And that's obviously what some of the narrative we're hearing about now makes people scared. But you still have a business plan. You still have a company you're trying to run. You still have targets to achieve. You still have clients to serve. So some things don't really change, but the ways in which you're going to service your client, the way in which you're going to sell to your client, the way in which you're going to understand the data about your client and what your client wants, that is changing very rapidly. And I think the companies that grab that and harness that and run with it and learn and make mistakes along the way, of course, but embrace it are those that are going to be very successful. I think those that would think it's a trend, it's going to go away, let's just watch from the sidelines. I think those companies are going to have a lot of challenges.